Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kimberly Erwin and Carl Erwin.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello. How
We're uh,
you doing?
we're doing well. We're in the history room on Zoom, and so
Uh,
you're our terrific guest today. Kimberly, you can see Carl's in Florida, and our discussion today is about the Erwin family, well-known family in Hudson. They have an amazing story, really, and I'm going to ask Carl and Kimberly to keep me straight because there's a lot of names here to go through. A lot of great stories that take you from the famous Chicken Shack in Hudson, Blue Hawk basketball superstars, a poet, a musician, the Harlem Wizards, and today even a timely book on race that we want to talk to Kimberly about. So Kimberly, let's start with you. And I know Kimberly, of course, from the Hudson Area Library Board, and she's a terrific contributor there. But you're a Hudsonian, meaning you grew up here, but you've got a thick passport. You've been all over the world, and I want to get this right. You've lived in over 16 cities and states and countries, and even an island in the Caribbean. So let's start by telling us about your journey from Hudson around the world and then back to Hudson again.
Well, thank you, Gary, for having us. My uncle and I, were Hudson staples. I used to tell people that if you ever wanted to find the Erwins, you just come up, hit the town, and just ask anyone, where do the Erwins live? And you'd be able to find us. I always felt a little bit famous having the Erwins name. When I was in second grade, my teacher, Mrs. Clapp, or was it first grade? First grade.
Yes.
Mrs. Clapp. She, the first day of school, she got me by the door and she says, "You're an Erwin." And I thought, and I'm looking up to this woman, although she's probably very tiny, but I'm looking up to her because I was very tiny in first grade. And she got this other teacher next door, Mrs. Kono, to come over, and she says, "She's an Erwin." And that was the first time I recognized that I was someone important. Yeah, I'm an Erwin. And she just let me know that she had my uncles, Butch and Peter, and she had my mom, Patty Erwin. And she was so excited. And I was just like, can I go in now? I was not impressed.
Well, there's something we shared, Kimberly, because I also had Mrs. Clapp for first grade.
Yeah.
Down at Charles Williams School, yeah.
Well, okay, so I was at John L. Edwards. So
JLE, yeah.
JLE, yeah. So yeah, that was my first.
After first grade, what happened?
After first grade, no, so I grew up in Hudson, and I was on the cheerleading team, and I ran track, and I did along with my sister, who was a basketball. Well, they let girls basketball, right? So my sister was able to play that. I was the short person in the family. Everyone else was tall, like you mentioned, basketball greats there. And I just thought I would get taller, and I did. So I had to go with the other sports. But then I didn't feel so bad because my uncle, Carl, who's on the call here, he was short too. He was the shortest of his family group there. So I just felt like maybe one in each group has to be short, I guess. So anyway, so after high school, I graduated, and I wanted to get out of Hudson. I needed to find people who more resembled me on an everyday basis, I thought.
Sure.
More about my community. What was it about being an African American? I was in classes sometimes where my great good friends would say, "Oh, Kim, she's different." And I'm like, different than who? Different than what? Every school, whether it was John L. Edwards or the middle school or Hudson High School, I've heard these statements. And I wouldn't say they were negative. They were just statements that I didn't really get and really understand. But they stayed with me. And I decided I needed to go to Spelman College. And I thought, well, actually, there was another student who had graduated a year before me who's on the radio now, Vernon Cross.
Oh, sure.
He was the one who came down Columbia Street one day when I lived at 217. And because we're talking about the Chicken Shack, I should be very specific on where we live.
Right.
And our house is still standing, and we have a great family friend who bought the house and lives there now, so it's still there. And well, anyway, I was sitting on one of the neighbors' stoops, And he comes by one summer and he says, "Oh, I know where you're going to school, Kim, because you sound like a person like that." And I said, what are you talking about, Vern? And he's like, "I was just in Atlanta. I was going to go to school there in Atlanta, Georgia. And Spelman is the right school for you." I had never heard of Spelman College.
Sure.
I'd never heard of it. But I went ahead and applied. And the application was only $20, and they didn't even require a photo. And I mean, all the other schools, there were some Ivy League schools and pretty good schools like NYU that I was thinking I wanted to go to because I wanted to be a dancer. And they had a really great dance program, and it was New York City. But as long as I was in the city anyway, I went to Spelman because they were the first people who accepted me with money. They were giving me a scholarship. So I was like,
terrific.
woo-hoo. So I went to Atlanta, and to make the longest story as short as possible, I couldn't stay anywhere long. So I graduated with my 2 degrees in 3.5 years at Spelman.
Wow.
And then I came back to Hudson briefly, recouped, and then went to New York City. I thought that was the place I wanted to live and die.
Sure.
I love the big city. It was funny because growing up, I thought the big city was Albany. You know, you get to Albany with the
A lot of us did, yeah.
egg. They had built the egg there, and I thought, wow, look at the city. And then someone said, no, it's New York City. And then we had a trip in high school to New York City, and I thought, okay, this is the city.
It's a city.
My life.
Yeah.
So after that, I needed to be in every city, it seems like. You mentioned all the cities that I lived in. It was never planned. They were just some places that a friend of mine said, "Hey, you want to drive me to," well, I lived in New York City. And then a friend of mine said, "Do you want to drive to California?" And I thought, no, come on. So we drove cross country, and I ended up staying in LA and Hollywood and Beverly Hills. So I had lots of addresses.
And what were you doing, Kim? What were you doing as a career?
Being a star, of course. No. Well, because it wasn't planned, I had started my little publishing company, Star Publishing, in New York City before I left, and my mom would go around with me to different fairs, and we would make personal children's books with my brand new printer, right? So we would put children's names in the book so the books could be about them. Again, I had this real interest of making sure that people saw themselves in a book. And I felt that if they did that, then they would be more interested in reading. And reading is powerful. I found out how powerful reading was
Yes.
when I went to grad school. Who knew? But you've got to have the kids read. And I felt that if students, because I felt that way to some extent, I always wanted to find me in a story.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult to impossible. So
Well
I would make up who I was to try to fit the storyline. And I think that's why I wanted to always go and be places and you know, have those different stories and be part
an
of
amazing
that.
story, yes, to tell.
Yeah, so I think that's what I did subconsciously. So I went to California, and from there I realized, so what was I doing? I don't know. I mean, I could tell you right now because the time is, you know, they're talking about racial relations and equity and justice.
Sure.
And then I think I heard on TV today even that people would get chosen by how their name sounds, right? So my name is Kimberly Erwin. That doesn't sound African American. I think people thought I was Jewish sometimes, and they were surprised when they saw me or they heard my voice, because I always got even from my family, you don't sound like us, you know, so I don't know how I sound. I don't even like listening to my voice. I'm like most people, right? We don't even like listening to my voice. And since I can't sing very well or hold a tune, I really don't like listening. Oh, you're laughing?
Yeah,
He's
Carl,
laughing because
yeah.
he's the singer in the family. And I recall one day at the, where were we, Carl, at the Boys and Girls Club at the time, right? And he had a set. He went and did a free set for the community. And me and my sister were background singers or backups. And we were going to, you know, be the Chanels or something, you know, Diana Ross and them doing the background. And for the first time in my life, I opened my mouth with a mic, and it sounded so horrible that I decided to lip sync the entire way. So yeah, so I don't know. So I didn't go there to be, I thought I'd be a star or do something, but I literally couldn't get a job. And then I thought, well, the part-time jobs I did get, I was teaching English as a second language at Berlitz. And I met so many amazing people from all over the world. I mean, I was working for, one of my clients was a, what was it, Hyundai? Um,
The car?
yeah, the car. He was like a vice president of the Western, United States West, whatever it was called. And he was my client. So I was like, wow. And then from there, I went to Mexico and taught in Mexico for Aero California pilots. They had to like learn English or be very good at English in order to get their license, because it seems like there was this big mountain and a lot of people were banging into the mountains because they weren't understanding English. So that wasn't good. So I was there for about 2 months in Saint, what is it? California Baja Sur. That's what it was called. The little Mexican
Yes.
island, like
Yes.
island, whatever they called it. Yeah. So from there, I thought, yeah, I like being in Mexico, but I didn't stay. I went back to California, and then I thought, I really need a real job. I mean, a job that really paid well, and I didn't want to go back to school.
Mhm.
I'm hearing you. You
Okay.
asking a question?
Yeah. So you froze there for a second, and you went to Mexico.
Oh, so I went to
And
Mexico, California, Baja Sur, in that side of Mexico, and I stayed there for 2 months and taught California or pilots at Aero California English. There were like 40 pilots, and one of the pilots was so hard to teach English to, and some of the other pilots were like, no, don't take your time. I mean, it was 7 days a week, 6 days a week, 8 hours a day.
wow.
And he was like, don't take your time with him. He barely can speak Spanish. I was like, oh, okay. Because like every time we taught him something else. And I wondered how how he's even a pilot. But yeah, they need to have that training so they wouldn't like bang into the mountains because they weren't understanding
Which is
linking.
important.
It was important.
Yeah. So what brought you back to Hudson?
Well,
you've had this amazing adventurous life. What brought you back here?
a family member.
Okay. Okay.
No, actually, I was like you said, I was in an island. I was doing international journalism for a company, SKN Online, and in St. Kitts and Nevis. And it was just a hiatus, like a break, it was the summer. I didn't want to spend the summer in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And they were like, fine, go. And, they were starting another company in another island group. So they were like, well, go and do you. And, you can come back and we can regroup in St. Kitts and Nevis in the fall. So I went to stay with my sister in Albany for a few weeks. That turned into now, 4 years? But it was just for vacation. And then my uncle, Butch, who's Marin Erwin, his name at birth, and his book, his professional name, Americus Moses Kash III, of whose book I have in my lap here. And I do a lot of research with his book, so I mean, his poems are amazing. So I like to read them every once in a while to go with what's going on with the flow and put it on his website, his Facebook page. But yeah, I was taking him out, me and a friend of mine. We were going to take him out because he was injured and he was at the Stuyvesant nursing facility.
I see.
And we went to take him out on take him out to eat and stuff. And his doctor came in and it was bad news. He had cancer. And from then on, I promised him that I would do what I promised him for 10 years. It seems like I would help him publish his book.
Oh,
and
nice.
so I stayed literally to help him do that. And then I had a romance that continued. And I thought, hey, my family's here. And if I could do any good in my community, I always thought to give back. I always thought to come back for a longer stay. And it just happened to be because I was needed by my family. And then my community seemed to want to embrace me.
Well, we're going to come back to Butch in a minute and ask more about his book, but I want to get to Carl. Now, Carl, people know you as Sonny, right? And you're joining us you're joining us, Sunny with an O, and you're joining us from sunny Florida with a U. How did you, how did you end up in Florida, and how long have you been down there?
Well, I've been down here since '98. I was invited down here with my friend who's back up there now, as a matter of fact, because he went back for his family. So I decided to stay. So I've been here ever since. And since I've been here, I've been playing drums in a band. And then the bishop made me a deacon and part of the church. So I've been doing that for a while. And now I done taught the grandson. Now he done took the drums over. So it gave me more time to write some of my materials, some gospel songs and some other mixed materials. So I just kind of stayed here. But my brother Butch, he always did try to get me to come back up there. But for the weather, no. I'd rather have Florida. That was one of the choices. And the living cost was a lot lower. So I'd rather stay here. But, unfortunately, by then, after I typed up some of his material, because his handwriting was a little difficult. It was fancy handwriting. So I had to figure out what he was saying first. So once I got that together and got all the book together, I sent it to Kim so she could edit it and try to help me get it together and publish it, because that was one of his dreams, to finish that up, especially after he did all the things he did in Hudson and was one of the biggest sports stars to come out of Hudson. And as a matter of fact, one of his friends was living down here, and I used to go to his house for a party, and we used to talk about my brother Butch and Peter, my other brother. He was 1 year younger than Butch, but back then in high school, he was the only one I know was dunking the ball backwards. So, that was the new thing before, they had even dunk contests. So it was kind of amazing. But my brother Moses went to Niagara University. Before that, it was Paul Smith.
Yep.
And he invited me up there with my band. We went up there and did a show with Freddie Cannon, who at that time had that Fun Park. He did that music for Fun Park, and we backed him up, and we stayed up there for the whole weekend. And then when he got back down in Hudson, my brother invited me down to the Apollo Theater. So I went to the Apollo Theater for the auditions. We did that for 2 weeks until we ran into a girl that we couldn't beat. You closed your eyes, she sounded like Dionne Warwick. So we tied her twice, so you had to win by yourself. And after that, they got discouraged, but we got a contract out of it with the Isley Brothers, went to his studio, did some recordings for their producer. Couldn't sign it, that type of thing. So, on and on in different venues and different.
So, Sonny, did you make a living playing music all these years? Or Kimberly says you're an extraordinary musician. Is this how you've, after all of that?
Oh yeah, there was times when I didn't have no job but music. I was playing 5-6 nights a week. Wow. I was making pretty good money. Yeah, they were hiring bands, but here comes disco. When the disco era came out, a lot of jobs disappeared. And, by that time, it was a little too late, but I still kept doing it. And, here and there you get a job maybe 2 or 3 times a week, or maybe once on a Saturday, that type of thing. So,
can I interject?
Yeah, sure.
Carl, I'd like to know more about your upbringing in the high school with the other bandmates that you were telling me about, that we were thinking about having, or we had planned to have you come for Music in the Stacks until the COVID-19 crisis changed everything. So can you mention?
Oh yeah,
so that'd be great to mention that.
Yeah, that was the Shades of Brass claim to fame, basically, because everybody in that band was from Hudson. And we were all young. We were like 16 to 18, the last couple of years of high school. So we formed that band, and that was the band that went to the Apollo Theater. And we were going to try to get it back together, but it never did. There's one saxophone player, John Florio, who was in the band. He was really good, and he always wanted to project that band and be a part of that band, but he had passed away. So I was going to get some other people that knew that music that I know. One was my cousin Vance Smith. He was going to be a part of it, and people that are teaching out, Joe Corrado in high school, and that we were going to pull that off to do some reminiscing at the library, but it never came by because of this COVID-19.
Well, we'll have to do it when things clear up, Sonny. That'll be great. What year did you graduate from Hudson High?
1966.
Wow.
Yeah,
quite a time for
right.
In Hudson.
It was. The other one story is my brother invited Calvin Murphy, that played on Niagara basketball with him down the Hudson. And Calvin, actually, he was a baton twirler. And he was in the parade, and Hudson had a parade and everything for him. And he walking down the street, throwing the baton 60, 80 feet in the air, catching it behind his back. And he stayed with us. And I don't know, a couple of years later, he ended up being the number one free throw shooter in the NBA.
I'm a big basketball.
Yeah. So him and my brother Peter played with him. Yeah.
I'm going to go back now, Kimberly, to your grandmother Helen. You mentioned the chicken shack before.
Well, before I mention that, I just want to say that there is footage of Calvin Murphy marching in a parade in Hudson.
Is that right?
Wow, I didn't know that.
There is, and I can't tell you where I've seen it, Gary, but you probably know better who to ask for that kind of footage.
Oh, interesting.
I have seen it.
We've got to get that on the History Room site.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's on YouTube. Wow.
I'll do that. Excellent. All right.
Well, my grandmother's an interesting story. I literally, she died on my 7th birthday. On the exact day. Some people say it was the day before because of the timing, but we wake up and my grandmother had passed, and I remember having to have a birthday party on that day, having some friends that I really wanted to come and whose parents finally said that they could come down the street and, come to the birthday party. So my mother was so fabulous having a birthday party the very next day of her mother's death. But this woman, my grandmother, was so remarkable. Like her funeral was so large. I remember it even at 7 years of age, that there was just a room full of everybody. And I look at the congregation today, of yesterday, with George Floyd, and I have to say, I'm sure there's reasons why it wasn't packed because of COVID-19. But you would think my grandmother was I don't know, a nobility in the sense of how many people showed up for her funeral.
Was it a takeout? Was it takeout chicken? Is that what it was?
No, it was takeout and eat-in. And I actually asked someone because they said that they would work there, and that people came from everywhere, and the smell of the chicken was just phenomenal. And it was fried chicken. Actually wrote it down. Macaroni, cheese, and macaroni salad, and that you get collard greens even there with drink and soda, and it was about $2 or $3 to get a whole plate. And she was like, and don't think that the plates were tiny, it was enough to fill you up.
It was a quarter-legged chicken, plus it was late at night, and when people would come out of the bars, they'd have a place to eat. And I mean, there'd be people from everywhere coming down just to get the chicken and the dinner, because that was basically the only place open as far as the restaurant late at night. Exactly. And they would come as far as from Albany all the way down to eat and then go back, whatever. But she ran that for years and kept it going till her passing. That's when it really went out of business, basically. And I think they'll knock the building down by now.
No, the building is still standing. I think it's 221, Carl, on Columbia Street.
Columbia.
It's a little shack.
Yeah. We were at 217, so it's up there, 223 or something like that. But I remember how she used to work late at night. One night she told me to take this bag home. I said, well, why? She said, I don't want to have to worry about it no more. So I took it home, and the next morning she come in, wake me up, and boom, $1,700 in cash is in that bag. And I had to pull it out from my pillow and give it to her so she could take it to the bank. And
was that all from the chicken shack?
Huh?
That was all from the chicken shack?
Yeah, cash money. One night. She could do that on the weekend. I mean, that's how fast she would be moving and cleaning and frying up the chicken and making up the dinners. And
You should have opened up the bag, Sonny.
yeah, I wish I would have right now.
Amazing.
Well, we kind of were a bank, in a way. We were like a payday loan. Somebody come in, oh, I need 20, I need 50, I need 100. She'd let them borrow it, that type of thing. She didn't have no qualms about that. She was really good at heart, and everybody loved her and knew her. So I mean, she would even take some out to the farms, and that's where a lot of customers were. The migrant workers would come up, and she'd take dinners out there to them, and she wouldn't charge them that much. Like Kim said, it'd be $2, $3, and you get a quarter-legged chicken, cornbread, a whole soul food meal.
Wow.
And you couldn't get that anywhere else in Hudson. It's impossible.
How long, Sonny, did she run the place? Was it there for many years?
Oh, yeah, decades. She ran that for years and years. Her and my father. My father, after they kind of split up, she kept it going, basically. And that was her main thing. That was her thing to do as far as keeping busy running that. And bingo, of course.
I have a quote from someone who shared something with me. She said, if people were hungry, my grandmother would just feed them. It wasn't just about her making money. It was a gathering, a place for people to be. The bums on the street, she would feed them. And that she was a loving type of person. And she would remember her because she was light with always red hair, like real big red hair and an afro and jewelry, rings and bracelets. You always knew Helen Erwin.
Kim's mother, Patricia, she was there too. She would do a lot of the cleaning and straightening up and taking care of the place when my mother had something else to do. So she could run it. And she was a cook too. Both of them. My mother was one of the best cooks, if not the best cook in Hudson. But my sister was right behind it. She could cook up something and make you want to come back for more, that kind of cooking.
Well, and she did that like later in life, in the, I would say mid-70s to into the 80s, when they would have the block party. They used to have the block party on Columbia Street between 2nd and 3rd.
Okay.
Right.
And so right in front of our house, right? So my mother would just bring out the food and it would be gone in like an hour, and we would be like, the white people are coming. And it would be gone. And I mean, it was like, you knew they would ask and everyone would just point down to where the food was when my mother was having it. And then even when they moved the block party to Warren Street, which was, I think, between Front and First, and Front, for the, she would set up there and the food would be gone in 2 hours. People were like, call me first, Pat, call me when you're going to set up. And it's funny because I wasn't really a soul food eater. So, I mean, I got it, but I didn't really get it. People were like, you're missing out. Kim, you just don't know.
We need more block parties in Hudson again. Those are.
Yes, we do. Well, we're supposed to have a block party in up near the library.
For our anniversary, yeah.
It would be great to have.
So tell me about Moses, Kimberly, and his poetry.
I think Carl knows a lot about the poetry too, because he started helping him initially.
Yeah.
And then it again, because I'm a writer, Butch used to always tell people, my niece, she's a writer, she's gonna do all this stuff for me. Yeah. And so I took time to look at, me and a friend, we looked at 400 poems and we got it down to about 150. And then I chose 100 that I liked, they chose 100 that they liked, and we narrowed it down. And I think we might only have 98 because of the way it had to be on the book. but it's an eclectic group of poetry. And I wanted to make sure that the poetry was a semblance of his entire life, you know, his life as an athlete, his life as a young man, as a son, his life as a father, his life as a husband, as a brother, you know, part of a community, as an author, and just have his whole general nature also in it. So some of the poems are long and not rhyming, and some of them are very godly about, you know, his view of the world as like giving hope and kindness. That's the kind of person he was. He was like, it was very interesting because he's very gentle, although he's really tall and kind of gruff sometimes looking. And then he's hilarious. I mean, he had poems that even when me and my sister were like 7 years old, he would come over to our house and he would say some words and we would be like, that's not poetry. But I guess now they would call it spoken word. I don't know. But
well, they call it like free verse, you know, poems or that, like in jazz when they say, you know, it's free jazz. That means you can possibly do anything you want, and all the chords would come together. That's like with free verse. You can say anything you want, but at the end it all comes together. You know, then you get the conclusion. So he did a lot of that because he was trying to describe how life was to him and for him. And he started a lot of times years ago in California when he was writing out at the LA Times. He was out there and he met a lot of people like O.J. Simpson, them people, and he was running in them circles writing about them for the LA Times. Then he came back from New York and he was working for the mayor of New York City at the time, Mayor Lindsay. And under Mayor Lindsay, he wasn't a writer, he was a photographer. So everywhere they go, you know, he would take pictures. And he had a lot of evidence of different people and stuff too. And that was one of the problems he had in the city. You know, he knew too much. And, you know, that kind of forced him to get back into life in Hudson, because I had to go down there and pick him up and bring him home. So at home, he started writing about these incidences and his life and what was going on in Hudson and different things in his past. And so he kind of accumulated that book. And when he moved to Albany, I took him to a print shop, and that was one of his, you know, it was only a little paperback kind of thing where he started writing poetry. And a lot of them got stolen and stuff. So he had about enough for like 2 or 3 books, but a lot of material got lost. And then one of the computers I had wrote about it got stolen or you know, was gone. So
because I'm sorry to cut you off, Carl, but I really want to have time to read one of his poems.
Yes,
and
go ahead.
I see his picture. Kim,
Yeah.
Can you hold up the book, the back of the book, to see his picture? Terrific.
And this is his book with his mom.
And this is available at the Hudson Library, by the way.
He was very
wow.
young. And the poem I want to read is, I'm Just a Black Man. Of course I'm not, but I'm just a black man. I'm just an invisible black man. I want justice. I want no more exploitation. I want people to care about me. I work for change. I work for motivation. I work for world peace. I want unity among the people, the races. I dream of unity. I dream of little black boys and little black girls and little white boys and little white girls holding hands in the face of adversity. I dream of a world yet to be. That's why we need unity in America.
Wow, very appropriate.
Yeah, but Jim, you got to date that. That's not yesterday. That's not 3 months ago.
Oh,
that was at least 4 or 5 years ago, if not more.
4 or 5 years ago? It's longer than that. It's like maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, I knew it was a long time ago.
4 years ago, he died 4 years ago.
Wow.
Right. I know it had to be. That's the first time I heard that.
For some of these, they're not dated, but yeah, these are all stem from like 20 years of his life, from like the 60s to the
What a
80s.
life. What a life.
Right.
What a life.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, just one last question. Now, you yourself are an author, as you mentioned, and a writer, and you've just come
Right.
up with a book, a children's book, and it's called "There's Only One Race, the Human One." Oh, it's on screen. Says me. But a children's book ending racism. So tell us about why you wrote this and this. Oh, terrific. So tell us about the book.
Well, quickly, I wrote the book because I was finishing up my book on overcoming racism for adults. And this is a book that I was writing for 14 years because it kind of evolved into a regular book. It was actually first because I was the Multicultural Student Affairs Director at Skidmore College in New York. And I was over a group called Alana, Asian, Latino, African American, Native American students. And then we added Muslim groups and several other groups. Also, actually, the GLBTQ group. I don't think the plus was there yet, but so that was my job, is to coordinate their groups and to help them feel comfortable in a college that was predominantly white and predominantly wealthy, because these are students that they weren't bussed up necessarily, but they were trained up from New York City, and they just didn't feel as comfortable in this kind of a setting because Saratoga, where Skidmore is just different from New York City. Right. And so with me there, I wasn't very good at just having parties, like celebrating each Heritage Month. And so I helped them by getting together with seminars. So I saw in their groups that, they would question each other or question themselves. Like in one of the groups, Raices, which was the Latin American group, you had students who didn't know whether they felt comfortable calling each other Latino American or was it Hispanic. Some were like, well, I'm Chicano, and some would say, well, what is Chicano? So I was like, whoa, these kids need to learn. So I would hold a seminar, and for me to hold a seminar for each of the groups, I would have to go different places and make copies of different works. And so before I left, my mom died during that period of time. And I just really wanted to, recoup. But I said to them, I will prepare a document for you guys, each of your groups, so that you can utilize. And I left before doing that. So that was really the start for my Overcoming Racism book that just kind of grew and grew and grew. But then when I came to Hudson, after working for my uncle, helping him publish his book on Amazon there, I decided, okay, walking through the schools, I saw the kids being just as concerned and confused as the students in Skidmore were. And well, when I was graduating from Hudson, I had questions too. That's what led me to go to Spelman College, an African HBCU, historically Black college and university. So I thought, if I could give back in any way, God put me here in this school where I graduated for a reason, right? And so I decided at that time to write this book that I only had I still kind of only have one chapter to finish the full manuscript for the Overcoming Racism. So I just took the material that I had for the adults and made it for children. And with the help of, you won't believe this, my kindergarten teacher, she was Mrs. Heron then, Mrs. Sharon Getty.
Wow.
We met via the Hudson Area Library meeting, a little soiree we had one day in Hudson. She was introduced to me, and we met each other again after 40 years.
I didn't know that.
Down my face. And so again, I mentioned the need for me to give back to the community this way, and she said, I'll help. I'll help you bring the language down to the young people's age. And so she was my editor for this book.
Oh, terrific. And it just came out earlier this
year. February 2020. Yes.
Terrific. And it's available on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon. You can get it in Hudson at the Spotty Dog. Mm-hmm. And ebook will be coming out in August. Right now we're doing ebook reviews. So if anybody wants to do a review of the book, you get a free copy, early release free copy of the ebook.
Terrific.
You just have to go to my sites. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So you just type in Kimberly Erwin author and it'll come up, and you ask to be an early reviewer, and no problem. Because I want to I have people who go, Kim, you should be making money right now. And it's not really about making money. It's about getting the material out there. And a lot of people are saying what's in the book, but it's not as thorough. If you listen to someone on TV, you get a soundbite. But if you have the actual book, and we just did I've been on the radio a couple of times with WGXC here in Hudson, with several different groups of people in their radio shows. And I just recently did a podcast, which will be put out next week. And I will showcase that also on my website or on my Facebook page. May I read a quick poem?
Sure, absolutely.
It's a quick one.
This is
not the
from
one
your
I
book,
normally read. But in the beginning, I asked parents, because this is a book that parents are going to buy, right, and talk to their kids. So the book is about teaching children about race, ethnicity, and cultural identity via scenarios and pictures of today's youth allows us a creative opportunity to root out and to end a most ignorant and destructive ism, racism. And on the bottom it is, one day may we all, of every hue, shade, and tone, come to know the beauty of us, the human rainbow.
Terrific. Certainly timely, given everything that's going on as we tape this in the country right now. A beautiful sentiment for people to think about, particularly parents, and talking to their children.
And then we have pictures of actual youth from Hudson.
Oh, nice.
These are Hudson students all throughout the text. And we even have our own resident teacher here.
Oh, yeah.
She's visible, and she does a lot at the library, also
Exactly.
with the kids. So, this is a community book. And I wanted to stress, I think if people see themselves in the book, then they can easily relate. Because it's a hard topic for adults to speak to children, but children, they can take anything at this age.
Right.
In fact, on our podcast, one of the people who were talking was a parent, and she was saying that her son was bullied, and he's a Black young boy, and he looked at her one day, and she's what she would say is of mixed race. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but that's her title for herself, and that makes sense for her. So it's positive. So she has a white mother and a Black father. And so she wanted her child, who is dark-skinned, black little boy, to feel comfortable. So she's a kindergarten teacher. So she knew everything that you need to know about reading to your kids and to, instill positivity and self-esteem. And he went from one school to another. So one school that he knew people to another school, which happened to be predominantly white. And a bully had mentioned how dark he was and something about his nose. And he came home, just didn't want to go back to school. And he looked at his mom one day, who is light skinned. She could probably pass for being white too, but she's light skinned. And he told her, I want to be white.
Oh, gee.
And this isn't 10 years, this isn't in the 60s or the 70s. This is in 2010. How can that happen in 2010?
Exactly.
Right? So this book is something, I'm not trying to make money on, it costs to make it, but I want people to get it and to feel comfortable. It helps. There's a place where you can help students in groups read it, and it's, again, on their level. It comes from a Hudson, edited by a Hudson school teacher, kindergarten school teacher of over 30 years. So, and great reviews. We've already read and taught the work, some of the material in the junior high, at the middle school, at the junior high school for 6th graders. And Andrew Miller, who's the media specialist there, he writes awesome, but he was one of the teachers in the library who taught the book to 6th graders.
Oh, nice. Excellent. A real Hudson story with a bigger message. Terrific, Kimberly. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
So look, we could talk all day about the Erwins, it looks like, right? And Sonny, thank you. We have to get you up here to play in the library when we can open again. That would be terrific to do a little reunion.
All right.
With you and your folks, the folks in your band and some substitutes. But thank you for being on the history.
He's ready.
That's
but
okay. I just want to mention, Kim also has the address for Moses' book on Amazon.
Yes. Yes. And we will direct people to both.
All right,
Kimberly's book and Moses' book. But thank you for being on the History Room on Zoom.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to have to do this again, Kim. There's more stories to tell. We didn't even get to them.
Yes, you can go on and on.
Some
Cut her off right now.
Some stories, in my research for this, some stories date back to the red light district. So I don't know if we can say
Better not told. Thank you. Take care. Take care, Sonny. Take care, Kimberly.
You too. God bless